The year was 2247, and the sky above New Eden Station had turned the color of bruised copper. Dr. Elara Voss stood on the observation deck of the orbital research outpost, watching the final fragments of the Zorathian moonship burn up in Earth's atmosphere like dying embers. The Zorath were gone. Everyone knew it. Their sun had gone supernova 3 months earlier, 32 light-years away, and the shockwave of light had only just reached Sol. Billions of sentient beings, artists, philosophers, engineers of living crystal, wiped out in a cosmic heartbeat. Everyone was gone except one. The escape pod had been found tumbling through the Oort cloud by a salvage drone. Inside was a single survivor in stasis, Crown Prince Kael'tharan Zorath, the last heir of the Sapphire Throne. The pod's AI had kept him alive for 29 years of real-time drift, waiting for someone to answer its increasingly faint distress beacon. Elara was the xenobiologist assigned to the revival team. She told herself it was pure science that made her volunteer for every shift beside his stasis cradle. The Zorath were humanoid, but not human. Taller, skin like moonlit opal, eyes the color of nebulae, four-chambered, hearts that glowed faintly beneath translucent sternums. Their language was half song, half telepathy. They had once filled the galaxy with cathedrals of light. She was the first voice he heard when the pod finally opened. "Easy," she whispered in galactic standard. Then, on impulse, in the lilting Zorathian she had spent years decoding from old transmissions. "You are safe, my prince." His eyes, swirling violet and gold, focused on her face. For a long moment he simply stared, as though trying to decide if she were real or another dream of the long dark. "You speak the high cant," he said at last, voice like whined through crystal chimes. "How is this possible? My people—" "I'm sorry," Elara said, and meant it more than she had ever meant anything. There was no time. The flare, it was instantaneous. Kael'tharan closed his eyes. The glow beneath his ribs dimmed to almost nothing. They gave him quarters on the station, a diplomatic suite no one had used since the last Martian trade delegation. He walked the corridors like a ghost, 7 feet tall, barefoot because human shoes hurt the webbing between his toes. Crew members stared. Children followed him at a distance, whispering about the glowing man. Elara became his shadow. Officially, she was documenting the physiological effects of long-term stasis on Zorathian biology. Unofficially, she was the only person he would speak to for more than a minute. At night, they sat on the observation deck, watching Earth turn beneath them. He taught her the names of constellations, as his people had seen them from the other side of the sky. She taught him swear words in 12 human languages. He laughed once, a sound like distant bells, and she felt her heart stumble over itself. Weeks became months. Kael'tharan's grief was not the loud human kind. It was geological. Whole days he would stand motionless at the viewport, staring at the stars that had murdered his civilization. When he finally moved, it was to ask Elara questions that broke her. "Tell me about your oceans," he said one night. "Do they still sing?" "They crash," she answered. "They roar. Sometimes they're quiet enough that you can hear your own pulse in your ears." He placed a hand over his own chest, where the light had grown steadily dimmer. "My pulse is almost silent now." Zorathian hearts, Elara had learned, were not just circulatory organs. They were symbiotic organs that housed a colony of bioluminescent algae passed down through bloodlines for millennia. The algae fed on emotional resonance: love, wonder, grief, hope. When a Zorath died of sorrow, the light simply went out. It was called the Quiet Fade. Kael'tharan was fading. The station commander wanted to parade him before the Galactic Council, the last living proof that the Zorath had existed. Media conglomerates offered billions for exclusive interviews. Elara watched politicians circle like sharks and felt something fierce and protective rise in her chest. One night she found him in the hydroponics bay, kneeling among the tomato vines. He had coaxed a single Zorathian starbloom to grow from a seed hidden in the lining of his stasis suit, an iridescent flower that drank starlight and hummed in frequencies only dogs and heartbroken aliens could hear. I kept one thing alive, he said without looking up. One useless, beautiful thing. Elara knelt beside him. The flower's petals brushed her wrist and sent a shiver of music through her bones. You kept yourself alive too, she said. That's not useless. His hand covered hers on the soil. His skin was cool, like marble kissed by moonlight. I do not know how to be the last, he whispered. Every story my people told ended in continuation. There is no myth for this. Then we'll write a new one, she said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. He turned to her then, and for the first time the despair in his eyes cracked open into something else. Something that looked almost like hope. They began, cautiously, to touch. First it was clinical, Elara taking blood samples monitoring the algae colonies. Then it was comfort, her hand on his arm when the grief ambushes came. Then it was deliberate, his long fingers tracing the line of her jaw as if memorizing a constellation, her palm pressed flat over the faint glow of his heart, feeling the alien rhythm that somehow matched her own. The first time they kissed, the station's artificial night cycle had just begun. They were in the zero-G gymnasium, floating among forgotten exercise equipment. He tasted like ozone and grief. She kissed him harder, as if she could pour 32 years of stolen starlight back into him. His heart flared, brief, startled, the color of sunrise on snow. Love, Elara discovered, was the one universal solvent. It worked on humans. It worked on Zorath. It worked across 32 light-years of extinction. But love is not a cure. 6 months after his arrival, the quiet fade accelerated. The algae were starving. Zorathian hearts needed more than one person's worth of emotion. They had evolved in a culture of millions, emotions braided together like light through crystal lattices. One human heart, no matter how fiercely it beat, was not enough. Kael'tharan began to plan his death with the same grace his people had once planned festivals. There is a tradition, he told her one night, lying tangled with her in his quarters, earth a blue-white marble outside the viewport. When a prince knows he will be the last, he chooses a sky to fall into. I have chosen yours. You don't get to choose that, Elara said, voice shaking. Not without me. He touched her cheek. Elara, my bright, impossible human. You have given me more than anyone's soul should be asked to give. Let me go with dignity. She kissed him until neither of them could breathe, then pulled away and said the most dangerous words she had ever spoken. No, I have a better idea. The plan was insane. It was probably illegal in 17 systems. It was definitely career suicide. Elara spent 3 weeks forging credentials, bribing pilots, and stealing a prototype faster-than-light shuttle with an experimental quantum entanglement drive. She told no one, not even Kael'tharan, until the night they slipped away from New Eden Station under the guise of a routine medical supply run. Where are we going? He asked, strapped into the co-pilot's seat, heart glowing faintly with curiosity. You'll see. They jumped 4 times, threading the needle through uncharted relay points Elara had pieced together, from Zorathian star charts older than humanity. On the 5th jump, the shuttle screamed warnings about radiation levels lethal to carbon-based life. They emerged in orbit around a dead star. It was Zorath Prime's sun, now a cold neutron star, spinning once every 4.3 seconds, dragging space-time into a whirlpool of gravity and ghost light. Around it orbited the shattered remnants of the Zorathian homeworld, a necklace of crystallized continents glowing faintly with residual Cherenkov radiation. And something else. Ships, hundreds of them. Thousands. Automated arcs launched in the final hours before the flare, carrying stasis pods full of Zorathian children, elders, artists, farmers. The arcs had been programmed to hide in the gravity well of the dead star, where no one would ever think to look, and wait. Wait for what? No one had known. Wait until the radiation died down. Wait until the galaxy forgot to hunt for survivors. Wait for a signal that never came. Until now. Elara triggered the royal resurrection protocol she had extracted from Kael'tharan's blood, a subspace harmonic only the Crown Prince could emit. Across the debris field, arc after arc began to wake. Lights bloomed like new constellations. Kael'tharan's heart ignited. The glow was so bright it lit the shuttle cabin in violet fire. He turned to Elara with tears streaming down his face. Actual liquid tears, something Zorathian physiology only did in the presence of overwhelming joy. "You found them," he choked. "You found my people. I found you a reason," she corrected softly. The first arc to respond was the Creche of 1,000 Songs. Its AI greeted Kael'tharan in the high cant, voice trembling with algorithms that had never expected to be used. Inside were 10,000 children, still dreaming in stasis. There were others. A library ship carrying every poem ever written in Zorathian light script, a garden ark full of star blooms and singing trees, a warship whose crew had chosen to sleep rather than fire on their own fleeing civilians. Not billions, not even millions, but enough to begin again. They spent the next year in the shadow of the dead star, waking ships one by one, building a new habitat inside the hollowed-out moon that had once been the Sapphire Palace. Elara became the first human ever granted honorary Zorathian citizenship. Children with nebula eyes learned to say her name. Old poets composed epics about the human woman who crossed the dark with love as her only map. Kael'tharan's heart never dimmed again. On the first anniversary of their arrival, he took her to the highest spire of the new palace, a crystal tower grown from the bones of the old moon. Earth was only a faint star from here, 32 light-years away, but he had installed a telescope pointed directly at the Sol system. "I can never go back," he said quietly. "The radiation here would kill you in months. And my people, they need their prince." "I know," Elara said. She had known for a year. Some days the grief of it threatened to swallow her whole. He knelt, the last prince of a dying civilization, on one knee before a human scientist wearing grease-stained coveralls. "Elara Voss," he said, voice carrying the weight of every star that had ever burned for love. "Will you stay? Will you be my consort, my co-ruler, the mother of whatever future we manage to build from ashes? I have no throne left to offer you, only a heart that beats because you taught it how—" She kissed him before he finished, tasting salt and starlight. "Yes," she whispered against his lips. 1,000 times yes. Years later, travelers passing through the neutron graveyard would speak of a new Zorathian colony blooming in the dark, small, fragile, fiercely alive. They would tell stories of a human woman with laugh lines around her eyes and a crown of living star blooms in her hair, who ruled beside a prince whose heart glowed like a newborn galaxy. And sometimes, on quiet nights, the couple would stand on their crystal balcony and look toward a distant, yellow star neither of them would ever see again. "Do you miss it?" he would ask. "Your oceans, your people." Every day, she would answer. "But I found something better." "What's that?" She would place his hand over her belly, where a new life, impossible, half human, half Zorathian, the first of its kind, kicked against both their palms. "I found tomorrow, and in the silence between dead stars, 2 hearts, 1 human, 1 alien, both unbreakable, beat in perfect luminous sync,